Hello and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My name is McKenna and today I'm going to be doing my best and worst in a low-key kind of wrap-up of 2020 reading. So I read 77 books in 2020 and I'm really proud of that, honestly. The year before I hit over 100 and I'm kind of hoping to have a better reading year this year, but it has not been the year for me. So I'm just ready to kind of move on with that and say, here are my favorites, my least favorites, and continue just on with my life. I also reread a lot and I do kind of want to do all the books I read in 2020, but I don't want to do that right now. And so I just want to talk about my favorite and least favorites. I had 6 worst or least favorite books and 10 favorite books in an honorable mention. So I'm going to start with the favorites. Because I want to. And we're working our way up. My honorable mention is The Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams. This was one of the last books, I think the second to last book I read this year, and I really just fell in love with it. At this point I have read the second book and I really love the second book as well, but the first book, oh, it was so good. And I think I gave this 4 stars when I first read it. I think I'm gonna go back and give it 5 stars. I really genuinely do love this book and I'm excited to move forward with the series. The 4th book is coming out in July of 2021, I believe. I love this series and I'm really excited about it. This book follows a Major League player, Gavin, after his wife has decided she wants to get a divorce because something went down one night and he found out that his wife has been faking it in bed their entire marriage, and he doesn't want to go through with the divorce. He wants to get her back, and to do so he gets the help of the Bromance Book Club, which is a group of guys in Nashville, because this takes place in Nashville, who all read romance novels. They call them manuals, and they help each other with their relationships, marriages, everything with these romance novels. It's kind of like a book club support group combo, but yeah, it really follows both of them, Thea and Gavin, as they each as Thea has to come to terms with whether or not she really wants to get back with him and everything, and Gavin has to fight for her to get back with her. And I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend. Number 10 on this list is Slay by Brittany Morris. This is another one I read pretty late in the year, but it kind of absolutely stole my heart. This is about a Black girl who has created her own game to show off. Essentially, Black excellence is entirely Black players with a lot of culture of that in general, and it's kind of her solace as she goes to a predominantly white, expensive school. But there has been a brawl, in real life. Someone has been murdered because of her game, and after this it is under a lot of fire. And then this random player comes in and tries to essentially take the game from her, and she has to figure out who it is, while also keeping this anonymous veil that she has had over her forever. No one knows that she's the one that created the game in her real life. And this was just so fantastic. Number 9 on this list was The Hand on the Wall by Maureen Johnson. This is the 3rd book in the Truly Devious series, which is about a girl that goes to a boarding school with a dark past. The boarding school has a dark past. The original owner's daughter and wife went missing shortly after the school was built, and this girl that goes in the current era is obsessed with true crime and really wants to solve that mystery. And then there's a murder in real time at the school, and she has to help figure that one out as well. I thought this really did a good job of tying up most of the loose ends that were there, and now we know we're getting another book in the series, and I don't know how far of a continuation it's going to be, but I'm still pretty excited about it. Number 8 on this list was Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This is all 3 novels, all 3 graphic novels. I really enjoyed them all. Honestly, I don't have a whole lot to say about this. If you don't know what this is about, I don't know where you've been, but I did really enjoy them and they made me cry. Number 7 is Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy by Elizabeth Kendall. This is the book that Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile on Netflix was kind of based on. This is written by the real life girlfriend of Ted Bundy, and there is a story from her daughter, how she interacted with Ted Bundy. I don't think by any means Elizabeth Kendall is like hard pressed to pursue a career in writing. It wasn't bad, it just wasn't amazing, but the story and everything was phenomenal. I loved this book in general. It was really interesting, and I listened to the audiobook. It was super engaging. It was kind of really straight to the point. There wasn't a lot of like flowery prose in it, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing for a story like this. It just really gave a little more insight into the entire story, which I think is really interesting. But also similar to the movie, if you want more of like the gory details of the crimes, this isn't for you. This is kind of more domestically the relationship between Ted and Elizabeth. But I did enjoy that, so. Number 6 is Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour. This is a book about a girl, I'm trying to remember everything, like a girl whose girlfriend broke up with her and now she's working on a low budget movie. Like not a super low budget movie. I think they make it like really good in the end, but like an indie movie, and it's kind of set up with this old stars auction where they find something and they have to take it to this other girl, and there's like a lot of things that happen, and it leads, I think like the tagline is something about like leading to true love. It's almost like a mini scavenger hunt and everything that's going on. I thought it was really interesting. I'm completely like out of left field right now. I can't remember exactly what this is about. All I really remember is that I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was really interesting that the main character was a set designer specifically. I like that we're getting a lot of more interesting career choices or job goals than just like the typical, oh, I want to be a writer, a musician, or whatever. Not that that's bad, but I like the diversity that is starting to be seen. I think generally a lot of sapphic books have a more interesting career path idea, which is interesting in and of its own. I might make an entire video of it, but they really do have interesting ass jobs. That's all I'm saying. Number 5 is Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I believe this is Elizabeth Acevedo's 3rd work, and it is her 2nd work that I have read. It is about 2 sisters. As their father dies, they live in different countries. They don't know their sisters, and as they find out their sisters and deal with the grief of their father dying in their own ways and kind of like meeting each other. Again, this is one that more the impact of it stuck with me than what it really is about, so I can't remember exact plot points, but I know that I believe it is one is living in New York and the other one is living in the Dominican Republic, and their father has gone back and forth between them and just kind of figuring everything out with the grief and how to grieve. It's just a phenomenal book. I love it so much. I highly recommend all of Elizabeth Acevedo's work. I love every single book that she's put out, but this one, I honestly don't even know if this one is my favorite, but this one is one of my absolute favorites of all time. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I highly recommend you go read it if you haven't. Number 4 on this list is My Friend Dahmer by Durf Backdurf. This is a little out there one. As you can see, I kind of went to true crime this year with Phantom Prince, My Life with Ted Bundy, and My Friend Dahmer. But this is a graphic novel kind of depicting Jeffrey Dahmer through his I believe like early middle school into like his entire high school years by someone who is actually friends with him in high school. This one also has become a movie with Ross Lynch, and I did enjoy the movie, but obviously the book is better. In the graphic novel format adds a lot to it in the art style, that Durf Backdorf uses, like, just completely blows it out of the park. It is the perfect art style for this type of book, and it's amazing. I really enjoyed like learning more about his history through this from someone that actually knew him. Jeffrey Dahmer is probably the serial killer I find the most interesting, so this kind of paired well for me to have this book in graphic novel, especially with the especially with the art style it had. I really enjoyed this, and it has some more like insider information than like a podcast or anything else would, because the guy actually knew him. So I highly recommend this one. I think my absolute favorite moment, and I believe I might have talked about this, but my absolute favorite moment was towards the end where they were talking about the 10-year reunion. Yeah, I think 10-year reunion, one of their reunions they were talking about, and it was just a couple years before he got caught, and they were all sitting around. Jeffrey Dahmer did not go to the reunion, and they were all sitting around and they were like, oh yeah, he's probably become a serial killer by now, and it was like 2 or 3 years before he got caught. And that moment gave me chills, and it just gave me chills like talking about it. We're up to the top 3. Number 3 on this list is I'll Be the One by Lila Lee. This book is about a plus-size girl going into a K-pop competition. She falls in love with someone through the K-pop competition, and it is just so cute. And as a plus-size person in industry, I say industry, in like, I'm in equestrian, it's something that is easily discriminated against. You can easily take it into account, because even if you're a great rider, it doesn't look as natural. The typical, like, I think English rider is generally like stick thin everything, and that's just not me. So I did relate to a lot of the things that this book talked about, and I really loved it, which is interesting because I didn't know, with going in with K-pop, I've never listened to K-pop before, so it was just kind of interesting to see, without knowing anything about K-pop, like what it would be like, and I ended up really loving it. So number 2 on this list is The King of Crows by Libba Bray. This is the 3rd book in the Diviner series, which, if you don't know, is a series about kids in the 1920s with supernatural powers that have to kind of stop the paranormal ghosts from taking over. And that's like a really surface level description of what that series is. It's so much more, and it has quickly become one of my favorite series of all time, like battling with the series that the first book, that my number 1 favorite book of the year is from. But let's go back. The reason this got 2nd on the list is it's been a while since I read it, and I really loved it when I read it. It took me a little while to read it, but I heard people like not liking the pacing, and I remember being okay with the pacing and liking it, but I would have had to reread it to like give it the number 1 spot to know that I loved it. I know this deserves to be on my best of 2020 list, but I didn't know if it was number 1, so it just got number 2. And number 1 on my list is Check Please Sticks and Stones by Ngozi Ukazu. Like I said, this was my other one that I was deliberating on. This is my other like favorite series of all time. This is a graphic novel series following Eric Biddle as he goes to college with a hockey scholarship after he had previously only really been in figure skating and a like junior hockey league where there was no checking allowed, and now he's in a college hockey team where it's all checking allowed. And it just kind of follows him through all 4 years as he, you know, deals with this and comes to terms with like, this is how it is. He gets better at hockey and grows into more of that, and he is gay, and he deals with that and goes through with that as well. And I love it so much. I love this graphic novel series with my whole entire being. And like all the characters are amazing. Please, 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 if you have not already, please go read this. Like, it's even a web comic if you don't want to buy the books or get the books somewhere. It's, please. So now that we've done the favorites, let's jump into the least favorites. Like I said, I only have 6 least favorites of this year, but I have some things to say about some of them, so I'll be interested to see how this goes. Number 6 on this list is Dumplin by Julie Murphy. I gave this book 2 stars. I had high hopes for this, being it's like a plus-size girl enters a beauty pageant. It did not follow through. Basically, my biggest gripe with this was that while Willow Dean is kind of like, I'm being discriminated against because I'm fat, she then goes and like makes mean comments about the other plus-size character in this book, as well as other characters who share kind of her same frame of mind of like wanting to enter this beauty competition to say something. And she specifically says like to her best friend who's thin and traditionally pretty that she can't be in the beauty pageant because, you know, this is my statement to make. Without you, you can't be in it. And it's just really stupid. I did not like it. I didn't like the movie. I thought the movie was better than the book, but I didn't like either. Movie is better than the book, which is not something you hear me say a lot. As I specifically said, the book is mostly always better. I probably said the book is always better than the movie. In this case, no, but let's move on. Number 5 on this list was Save the Date by Morgan Matson. It's about this girl's brother's wedding, or sister's wedding, but I didn't really care. I thought the girl was really spoiled and entitled the entire time. I thought, like, she didn't really learn the lessons she needed to in the long run. I mean, one of the lessons was learned. She kind of acted like she had to fix everything when she really didn't. She could have asked for help. I thought it was just stupid. Honestly, it was a waste of time for me to read. I think I gave it 1 star. Let me look. Yeah, I gave this 1 star, and this was a April read for me. It was a quarantine read for me. Number 4 on this list is 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. I should have known not to read this book, but I did anyway, and it was just stupid. It was so fucking stupid. I wasted time. I wasted brain cells. I wasted resources trying to get this audiobook to listen to. It was just so grossly stupid, honestly. I mean, every critique you've ever heard of 50 Shades of Grey mostly essentially what I was gonna say here, so I mean, it's nothing new. So, you know, I read 50 Shades of Grey. I didn't like it. Let's get into the books that I actually have something to say about, because I want to. Number 3 is Heroine by Mindy McGinnis. I talked a little bit about Mindy McGinnis's books in my Female of the Species, like Bookish Makeup Monday, Bookish Beauty, whatever it was at that time. I believe it was Bookish Beauty. And like how I don't like her reading or her books, and I really should stop reading them, but I'm probably not going to for a while. Anyway, Heroine by Mindy McGinnis, I felt like didn't tell a good story, like a good setup of a story for this kind of thing. I do think drug abuse, especially in adolescence, is something that really needs to be talked about and touched on. I don't think this was the way to do it. I didn't like how it was done, personally. That's just because, like, it might also be because I just don't really like Mindy McGinnis's writing style. I don't really like her characters, etc. But I didn't like the way it started off with, like, a snippet from close to the very end and then went back to the beginning of the story. I think that was a little confusing, because I'm going to spoil it right for you right now, because this is the beginning of the book. At the beginning of the book, she wakes up in a room of like 3 or 4 dead people, and she's like, oh, gotta go. I made the right decision, but apparently they didn't. Gotta go. And then just left and went to her softball game. And then you flash back to what actually happened, where they got in the accident, and as she was like struggling with it. I think there could be, I feel like this is either too zoomed in or too zoomed out of this story. I feel like we don't get enough of her before she starts abusing drugs, and we don't get enough after, or we get too much before and too much after. It depends on what you want the story to be. if you wanted the story to be the evolution of her before like just her normal, then getting into the accident, getting addicted to drugs, and then a little bit more of the recovery. This is not, you were a little too zoomed in, because accident happens at the beginning. At the end, she hasn't even started recovery yet. And if you wanted to do recovery, which obviously she didn't because it was a lot of the actual abuse part, you know, you would have started somewhere. I just feel like the timing of this book was off for me. It needed to be either more zoomed in on a different part. I just also feel like zooming in specifically on this part, the actual drug abuse part, could be problematic if someone just sees that and is like, oh, she seems to have everything together while she's doing drugs. I could do that too. And yeah, you do see her kind of fall apart in the end, but you never see the process of recovery or truly how hard it's going to be to recover from this. And I don't know, I just feel like the idea was good. I feel like the effort was kind of there, not entirely, but kind of there. And she was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm just gonna forge ahead and do it. And she forged ahead and did it. And it didn't really do what it needed to do or what it should have done. That's my personal opinion. Again, I don't really like her characters, especially her female characters, which I know is stupid to say, but I don't. Again, I talk a lot more about this in my Female of the Species Bookish Beauty, but yeah, I do talk a little bit about Heroine. We're gonna get further into this though. Yeah, I didn't really like this one. How many stars did I give this? I don't even know. I gave it 2 stars. And I also gave 50 Shades of Grey 1 star for the reference of this. Number 2 on my list is Frankly in Love by David Yoon. I feel like a lot of people loved this book. I did not. I read this in January, so I have a little bit of it in my like Visco Girls Readathon vlog if you want to have more of my thoughts while I was reading this. Basically, my main gripe with this was that it was too long. There were 3 different stories in this book, and what is advertised you get, and then you get another 100 pages, and then you get like 50 more. So by the end, what you have is not anywhere close to the story that you started with. The basis of the story is like a fake dating between these 2 kids in the same family. I misspoke here. It isn't actually that they're from the same family. Their families run in like the same social circles. So no, this isn't set in Alabama. They are not related. Their families are just like friends and in the same social like circle or group. So they can each date different people. So they pretend to be dating at these family events so they don't get asked questions, and then they can go date whoever they want to date on the side. They're Korean American and they want him to date Korean, and he falls for a white girl, and the girl that he's fake dating, I honestly can't remember, but he isn't Korean. I gave it 2 stars. I do think, because the main thing was like problematic, I do think it's a little problematic. I just don't think it's personally something that I've done enough research on or like can talk about enough to say yes or no it's problematic, but I can speak from my experience in reading this book and that it didn't feel right. The story that was advertised was not the story that was carried out, and you know, it's fine. The fake dating happened. I thought that would be the end of it. Then this real dating happened between the fake dating people. And I was like, okay, we're gonna get a little bit of this. Then we got a lot of that. And then like a breakup. And then more and more. I feel like this really could have been a duology. It really could have been two different stories, but instead it was just crammed into one book. It just felt off. I just really didn't like that. And my number one least favorite book of the year was The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis. Probably pretty explanatory by the fact that I made a whole video about it, which I have talked about already and will link in the description. I give this 1 star. I didn't read the description of this book going in, so I went off of the author's word because I had met the author, I believe, I think it's 4 years ago now, like my sophomore year of high school. And she was like, oh, it's like a female Dexter killing off people. She's like a female serial killer killing off, you know, the chick that killed her dad. No, that killed her sister, that raped her sister, something like that. Killing off bad men was the name of the game. I don't want to be like, that's blatantly not true, but like, female serial killer, female Dexter, blatantly not a true assessment of this book. I believe within the book she kills like 2 people, and I think the serial killer classification is 3 people. Hey Siri, how many people do you have to kill to be considered a serial killer? A serial killer is typically a person who murders 3 or more people. Usually, I think it's gonna be like usually in a pattern. She killed 2, so she's not a serial killer. I hate that this has to be the distinction of it. And most of the book is not about that. I'm just gonna be frank here. I again think this was a good idea with bad execution. The high school setting seemed a little off to me. I really like what they were trying to do, or what Mindy McGinnis was trying to do. It just wasn't right. Like, I made a whole video about it. But let me summarize why I don't think this is a good book. False advertising, like I just mentioned. The main character is completely off her rocker in not even a good way. She tries to make the main character redeemable, but it doesn't work like at all. From my basic understanding, it's basically a pseudo-feminist book where she's really trying to make points, but they're really over the top and don't come across well. There are certain points I make in the video. If you really want to know, please just go watch the video, because I really thought it was a good video, so please watch it. But it just, there was so much that was like wrong with it. She's advertised to be a serial killer, not really a serial killer. They try to redeem her, but not well enough. The romance is bad. Any like redemption arc that some of the characters get is just cut off, and the end is one of the laziest ends imaginable. And the thing is, my issue is, she's used that out before. Mindy McGinnis has used that same, and I'm not gonna say what it is because it's a fucking spoiler, but that same out before has been used multiple times. I'm gonna make a whole video on her because I feel like I need to. I feel like I need to speak my piece. My pitfall with this author is just that I like the ideas of her books. I never like the execution, but I keep trying, hoping that there's one that I will like, and it never ends up happening. But yeah, The Female of the Species, the thing is, I've wanted to read this since 2017. I've wanted to read it for 4 fucking years now. I guess, well, it would have been 3 years then. I wanted to read it for over 3 years when I read it. And I did, and it was so disappointing to me. To the point that I hated it, and I made a whole video about how I hated it. I'm just really, frankly disappointed, and hopefully, maybe at some point I'll find one of Mindy McGinnis's books that I like, but for now, I haven't. So those were my favorites and least favorites of 2020. 2020. Why did I say 20 again? Let me know down in the comments below what some of your favorites and least favorites were, if you made a video about it, like everything. I'm really interested to see what some of people's favorites and least favorite of this year are. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you sometime for a new one. Bye!